It would be great to chart words someday. I mean, you know, it's the notion of honor or honorable, 29 times said in the play, honor or honorable, right? Again, so just sort of interesting sort of thing. Noble is said like 39 times. These issues are really deep and true, and obviously, I mean, one of the things we talked a lot about was following the hero, quote-unquote hero, Brutus, and how those kinds of things literally land in his body, right? He embodies them. They have meaning to him when somebody says them about him, right? It's in the body of the actor. That's the job then, is to hold that word and hold what it means when it's not there, and to hold whatever that opposite is when you discover the truth about yourself, right? So it's always kind of interesting to chart words. And so we've got him being said of being noble and honorable. Cassie starts in on him right from the beginning. And of course, what does Mark Antony say about him at the end? He was the noblest Roman of all, right at the end. So it's got its own kind of chart. And where does this happen in here? Mark Antony also has sort of like a Brutus moment here to sort of like how you twist that around. And you could look at the whole play just by charting honor and noble. You can look at the whole play charting days. You can look at the whole play charting inside, outside. You can look at the whole play just through, see what I mean? You can go through theme, character. It all lines up to be the same. Which is why they feel so dense and complex, is everything is being used together as examples. And so if I get one thing orally, somebody else will get something else theatrically in the body of, or some actor came on and, you know, do we think that all that doubling was all that conscious? Sometimes it's like, hey, you're off stage, put on the crowd, get on stage, you know. But because we're also trained to believe that everything has meaning in the theater, you know, we work very hard to be conscious about that representation and what that feels like and looks like and has meaning to it. And so some of us will react viscerally to visual things, and some of us will react orally, etc., etc. So the idea is that you've got all these to line up, and they're all there to be lined up, because they are all lined up. That's the compactness of these. That's why they seem so dense. Because he does let them. He takes all that time. In a poet, remember we're talking a lot about poetry. In a poetic sense, he uses all the different kinds of codes he possibly can. This is called semiotics, the study of signs, and that you can layer a theater production by the kinds of ways that you could give information. Some of it's physical, like the wonderful sets that Richard would build, right? Costumes, even wigs have meaning, right? And actions, characters, themes, thoughts, ideas, all have a certain look. They can all be charted and layered in, and they are parts of the drama that we talked about, you know, a couple weeks ago. All fit in with the thing that's known as a play, right? And that's why they feel so, to me, that's why they're so dense, because you can pull one of them out and you go, oh my God, he even did that? He even thought that, or intuited that, or knew to do that, or whatever, right? So,
are they thinking about cutting the Sin of the Poet scene next year? Did I read that right? Has anybody else heard that?
No, I think that's
Didn't they say?
Yeah, they might. They say.
I don't know that Amanda is that far along in any of that, so I don't...
I think the breakdown said something, it somehow alluded to that idea.
Uh-huh. Well, yes. Uh-huh. Here's what's interesting about the challenge that we offer directors when we put the plays in different spaces. You know, it's the notion of expansion and contraction. And in the new theater, there are certain limitations that have to happen in terms of size and scale and how you want to make that compression. Do you want to just sort of downscale this? You know, it's like doing a recipe, right? If you double the recipe, it's not quite the same thing. Do you know what I mean? Like something about the flour expands more than you can kind of calculate or something. You know what I'm saying about that, right? It's like, I'm going to quadruple that. I need 4 times. Ugh, it doesn't quite work. So also same here. It's like it's already a contained thing. You know what I mean? So here's an interesting structural challenge. How does she, what does she just like, oh, now what happens to them? What are you missing? So to know what's there and to know kind of proportionally how it works and to kind of know the emotional values that are being we're being pulled through, may be a way to then figure out how you double, cut, move, slice, dice, blah, 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 blah. And that there has to be some intervention, directorial, dramaturgical intervention, just to make that thing fit. For this time, with this group of actors, in this space, this is what we came up with. Always that, with this time. in this space with this group of actors and for this audience. That's what we came up with. And like, you know what? Next time it's going to be like the full meal deal. You know, I along with Libby and Scott Kaiser, I was part of the 7 character, and as was Tony, the 7 character Measure for Measure. I was always like, the next time, full meal deal. Don't worry, there's going to be none of that. We're going to, right? It's going to be out of the Bowman sleeve, so we can do kind of one act 3, one, just like, because it's fun to do both. But it's really kind of great to kind of know what's the integrity. How do you create a new integrity? And it seems to me, if you know what the old integrity is, trying to sort of base a theory on that. I mean, that's what I'm proposing as a theoretical way to go about making these choices. Now, look, we have to make choices no matter how full meal deal it's going to be. You have to cut things in 12 nights already. You know what I mean? I mean, we're never really kind of going in there full. For lots of reasons. That there are our own conventions. There are conventions today, right? We're talking about translating conventions from 400 years ago, and assumptions made on those conventions, because we know very little, really. We have, and I have theories about that, but we have very little theories about what those conventions really meant. What did it really mean to have men playing women, playing men, playing women, playing men? Yeah. What did it mean? Couldn't speculate, because in Spain at the same time, men weren't allowed to impersonate women. It's a cultural thing, it's really, right? I mean, what else assumption can you make? Logical assumption could I make based on sort of that, comparing those things? But what did it feel like? I have no idea. How funny was it? I have no idea. What were they really saying about women, men? I have no idea, right? So it's an interesting convention for us, because it's like, hey, no, we don't always want to do that. Sometimes it's fun, because it has a different kind of meaning, and sometimes that's fun to do. Like the last time we did Henry IV Part 2, it was all men, right? Part 2. Henry IV Part 2, right? Yeah, right. Just sort of interesting. Again, for this time only with this group of artists. But just look what we got. Because every time you go into these places, you can get something else out of it. So, how do we translate those conventions, even for us today? We have to put an intermission in, right? We do it at night with lights, right? We have women playing those roles. I mean, these are sort of basic things in a way, but there are conventions that we don't think anything of them, in a way, right? But that's not the way these were built. They were not built that way. And so there's still even things that, we have to sort of figure out how to negotiate so that we can receive it, as much of it as possible. Because they're still very foreign. You can study these things, but the language use is still very foreign. These are not the history stories, especially. We're not raised with the kings and queens of England in our, starting in 3rd grade, start memorizing it. I think you could probably scratch any English person. They start, from, when Harold was defeated at Hastings. I mean, I think it's all the way through, and I'm like, I can't think of 14 presidents, and nor can I do it in order, right? So, I mean, it's sort of different kind of assumption about a group, homogeneous knowledge base, and some of it's cultural, and some of it's theatrically conventional, a knowledge base, and then how do you bring audiences along to then change rules, which is, of course, a great way to create suspense and tension and move things along, which is also, I think, a theatrical project. And you can do that by introducing new characters, which, as you know, often happens in Shakespeare. All of a sudden, in the 3rd act, some new guy shows up, and you're like, where did he come from? It's some actor that got bopped off, and then the 2nd act, no doubt, who had come back on, and some other character. But it's also a way to create new energy and highlight in a community way more of the theme of the play. That there's always community that's at issue in almost all these plays. There's always somebody fighting against community, and what the consequences would be of that.